The laughter started before Ambassador David Reed even finished his sentence. He stood in the center of the Galactic Council chambers, surrounded by creatures that could tear him apart with their bare hands, and they were laughing at him. Not polite chuckles or dismissive snorts, but full-throated, belly-shaking laughter that echoed off the crystalline walls. David had faced difficult negotiations before. He had stared down corporate executives and hostile politicians without flinching, but nothing prepared him for this moment, standing among beings who considered humanity a joke. The Rapthar delegate rose from his seat, scales glinting under the chamber lights. Sareth was his name, and he was easily 3 meters tall with claws that could slice through steel, his yellow eyes fixed on David with something between amusement and pity. "The humans wish to join the arena games?" Sareth's voice rumbled like thunder. "Tell me, Softskin, what weapons does your species possess? Do you have venomous fangs? Armor plating? Perhaps claws that can rend flesh?" David kept his face neutral. "We have intelligence. We have determination. You have nothing." The Fenrock pack leader, Gren, interrupted. His wolf-like features twisted into a snarl that might have been a smile. "Your species is prey pretending to be predators. Look at you. Thin skin that tears at the slightest scratch. Weak jaws that cannot even crack bone. Your senses are so dull you cannot hear a heartbeat from across a room." More laughter rippled through the assembly. Representatives from dozens of worlds joined in the mockery. The insectoid Quillrack clicked their mandibles in what David had learned was their version of amusement. The massive Krun, beings of living stone, rumbled with deep vibrations that shook the floor. David waited for the noise to die down. He had been briefed about this possibility. Earth's xenobiologists had warned him that humanity would be seen as weak by galactic standards. No natural weapons, no enhanced senses, just soft flesh and fragile bones. Nevertheless, David said quietly, "Earth accepts the challenge." The laughter stopped. Sareth leaned forward, his expression shifting from amusement to something darker. "You understand what you are agreeing to? The arena games are not symbolic. They are combat. Real combat. Species have gone extinct because they entered unprepared. I understand." Gren stood, his pack members rising with him. "Then you condemn your warriors to death. The games show the galaxy which species deserve respect and which deserve to serve. You have no chance, human. Withdraw now and accept a lesser position. Become a client species under Fenrock protection. We will be merciful masters." David felt anger flash through him, but he pushed it down. Getting emotional now would only make things worse. Earth does not seek masters. We seek membership as equals. Equals. Sareth's laugh was sharp and cutting. "You are not equal to a Rapthar hatchling, much less a warrior. But very well. We accept your challenge. 6 months from now, send your best fighters to the arena world. We will show the galaxy why humanity should have stayed in their quiet corner of space." The council session ended shortly after. David walked through the corridors of the orbital station, feeling eyes on him from every direction. Alien species whispered and pointed. Some looked at him with pity, others with predatory interest as if sizing up easy prey. In his private quarters, David allowed himself to slump into a chair. He activated the secure communication channel to Earth and waited for the connection to establish. When the screen flickered to life, he saw the faces of Earth's military command, political leaders, and scientific advisors all crowded around the transmission point. "Well?" General Patricia Morrison asked. Her gray hair and stern expression reminded David of his grandmother, but her eyes held the sharpness of a career soldier. "They laughed at us," David said simply. Then they accepted. "We have 6 months to prepare a team. Can we win?" This from Dr. Amara Okonkwo, head of Earth's Xenobiology Department. Her dark eyes were intense, analytical. "I don't know," David admitted. "I watched recordings of previous games. The current champions are the Rapthar. They've held the title for 5 consecutive tournaments. Their warriors are faster, stronger, and more durable than any human. They have natural weapons we can't match." "Then why did you accept?" asked President Linda Foster. David met her gaze through the screen. "Because refusing would have been worse. Species that decline the challenge are marked as prey. Client species. The galaxy would see us as weak and we would never be taken seriously. Our trade agreements, our territorial claims, everything would be negotiated from a position of permanent inferiority." Silence filled the channel. Everyone understood the implications. Humanity had spent 2 centuries reaching the stars, building relationships with alien civilizations, establishing themselves as a spacefaring species. All of that progress could be undone if they were labeled as cowards. Then we fight, General Morrison said. We find our best soldiers and we train them for war. It won't be enough. Dr. Okonkwo spoke softly but firmly. I've analyzed the biological data on arena participants. Even our best special forces operators cannot match the physical capabilities of species that evolved as apex predators. We need a different approach. What kind of approach? President Foster asked. Dr. Okonkwo smiled, and there was something fierce in that expression. Give me 2 weeks. I have an idea, but I need to do some research first. Research into what makes something truly dangerous. David wanted to ask more, but he could see the determination in her eyes. Whatever she was planning, she believed in it completely. You have your 2 weeks, President Foster said. But understand this, all of you. Failure is not an option. If we lose, humanity becomes a footnote in galactic history. If we win, we claim our place among the stars as equals. Everything we've worked for depends on what happens 6 months from now. The transmission ended. David sat in the darkness of his quarters thinking about the laughter in the council chambers. Thinking about Sareth's claws and Gren's fangs. Thinking about human soldiers facing creatures that outmatched them in every physical category. Somewhere on Earth, Dr. Okonkwo was beginning her research. David hoped whatever she found would be enough, because right now, hope was all humanity had. The conference room at Earth Military Strategic Command felt too small for the weight of the decision being made. General Patricia Morrison studied the faces around the table, seeing the same frustration she felt reflected in every pair of eyes. 2 weeks had passed since Ambassador Reed's transmission, and they were no closer to a solution. Run the simulation again, she said to the technician. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human soldier in combat against a Rapthar warrior. The technician had used every advantage. The best body armor Earth could produce, advanced weapons, superior tactical positioning. It didn't matter. The simulation ended the same way it always did. The Rapthar's superior speed and natural weapons overwhelmed the human defender in less than 30 seconds. That's the 15th variation, Colonel Robert Hayes said grimly. Same result every time. We can't win a straight fight. What about asymmetric warfare? Suggested Commander Lisa Park. Traps, ambushes, guerrilla tactics? General Morrison shook her head. The arena has rules. Designated combat zones, limited preparation time, judges monitoring for prohibited weapons. We can use tactics, but we can't avoid direct confrontation. And in direct confrontation, we lose. The door opened and Dr. Amara Okonkwo entered, carrying a tablet and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usual neat appearance was replaced by rumpled clothes and wild hair, but her eyes were bright with excitement. Sorry I'm late, she said, not sounding sorry at all. I've been in the field. Doctor, we're in the middle of... General Morrison began. I know what you're in the middle of, Amara interrupted. You're trying to make humans into something we're not. Trying to match alien predators at their own game. It won't work. We're aware of that, Colonel Hayes said dryly, which is why we're having this very depressing meeting. Amara set her tablet on the table and pulled up a video. I want to show you something. This footage is from a wildlife reserve in Africa. The screen showed a honey badger, a small creature no bigger than a medium-sized dog. It was approaching a cobra, one of Africa's deadliest snakes. The room fell silent as they watched the confrontation unfold. The cobra struck, fangs sinking into the badger's face. The badger barely seemed to notice. It grabbed the snake and began tearing it apart, even as the venom spread through its system. Minutes later, the badger collapsed, apparently dead from the poison. Well, that's not encouraging, Commander Park muttered. Wait, Amara said. They watched. 2 hours passed in accelerated footage. Then the honey badger stirred. It stood up, shook itself off, and finished eating the cobra before wandering away. What just happened? General Morrison asked. The honey badger has evolved incredible resistance to toxins, Amara explained. But more than that, watch this next clip. She showed footage of a honey badger fighting a lion. The massive predator outweighed the badger by hundreds of pounds, but the smaller creature refused to back down. It dodged, bit, clawed, and fought with such ferocity that the lion eventually gave up and left. Honey badgers have a reputation, Amara continued, her voice gaining intensity. They're known as the most fearless animals on Earth. They fight leopards. They raid beehives despite thousands of stings. They've been documented taking on entire packs of wild dogs. And you know what their secret is? Superior aggression? Colonel Hayes guessed. No, it's that they don't care. Amara leaned forward. They don't care that they're smaller. They don't care that they're outnumbered. They don't care about pain or fear or the odds against them. They just keep fighting until either they win or they physically cannot continue. And often their opponents give up first because fighting a honey badger is exhausting and costly, even if you're stronger. General Morrison stared at the frozen image of the honey badger on the screen. You're suggesting we model our strategy on an animal? I'm suggesting we stop trying to match aliens in areas where they're superior and start using what makes humans unique. Amara pulled up new data. Humans are persistence hunters. Our ancestors didn't have claws or fangs, but they could run prey to exhaustion over days if necessary. We can survive injuries that would kill other species because we developed advanced healing. We can adapt to almost any environment. And most importantly, we have something most predator species lack: the ability to keep fighting even when logic says we should quit. The Rapthar and Fenrock evolved to kill quickly, she continued. Ambush predators, burst hunters. They're built for overwhelming force in short engagements. But what happens when their opponent refuses to stay down? What happens when every attack is met with a counterattack? When every wound is ignored? When the fight just keeps going? Commander Park was nodding slowly. They get tired, frustrated, they start making mistakes. Exactly. Amara pulled up psychological profiles. I've been studying arena combat footage. Most matches are decided in the first few minutes because one side recognizes they're beaten and surrenders. But humans have a documented history of fighting long past the point where surrender would be logical. We call it determination, stubbornness, courage. The honey badger doesn't have words for it. It just does it instinctively. You want to create a honey badger protocol? General Morrison said slowly. Train soldiers to fight like they don't care about the odds. Not just fight like it. Believe it. Amara's expression was fierce. We select soldiers based on psychological resilience, not just physical ability. We train them to take damage and keep going. We teach them that winning doesn't mean being stronger. It means being the last one standing. We make them understand that the fight isn't over until they choose to quit. And we make them the kind of people who never choose that. The room was quiet as everyone absorbed the implications. It was crazy. It went against every conventional military doctrine about preserving forces and fighting smart. It was also the first idea anyone had presented that might actually work. The aliens will still be stronger, Colonel Hayes pointed out. They'll still have natural weapons. Yes, Amara agreed. But we'll have tools which they often don't use because they don't need to. We'll have human endurance, which exceeds most predator species. We'll have tactical flexibility, because humans are generalists who adapt rather than specialists locked into instinctive behaviors. And we'll have the psychological advantage of being the opponent who doesn't know when to quit. General Morrison stood and walked to the window, looking out over the military complex. She thought about the honey badger fighting the lion, the absurd courage of a small creature facing overwhelming force. She thought about human history, filled with last stands and impossible victories won through sheer refusal to surrender. How long would you need to implement this? She asked. We have 6 months until the arena, Amara said. I'd need 3 months to select candidates and develop the training program. 3 months to turn them into something the galaxy has never seen before. And if it doesn't work, Amara smiled grimly, then at least we'll go down fighting, which is more than the aliens expect from us anyway. General Morrison turned back to the room. Colonel Hayes, you'll work with Dr. Okonkwo on candidate selection. Commander Park, you'll develop the tactical training framework. I want the first candidates identified within 1 week. What should we call this unit? Commander Park asked. General Morrison looked at the image of the honey badger still frozen on the screen, its teeth bared in eternal defiance. The Badger Brigade, she said, and may whatever gods are listening have mercy on anyone who underestimates them. Commander Alex Santos had faced combat in 3 different war zones and countless training scenarios that pushed human limits. None of it prepared him for the feeling of stepping off the transport shuttle onto Arena World and seeing thousands of alien eyes turn toward his team with open contempt. The orbital station was massive, a construct of metal and crystal that housed representatives from hundreds of worlds. Viewing platforms rose on all sides, already packed with spectators eager to watch the upcoming games. Alex could hear their voices translated through his earpiece into dozens of languages, all saying variations of the same thing. Those are the humans? They look so fragile. This will be over quickly. Alex led his team of 12 through the arrival plaza. They wore simple gray combat suits with minimal armor, designed for mobility rather than protection. On each shoulder was a patch showing a small black and white creature with its teeth bared. Most of the aliens wouldn't recognize a honey badger. They would learn. Behind him walked his team. Ruth Abrams, the combat medic whose hands stayed steady no matter how bad things got. Li Chen, quiet and intense, who had scored highest in pain tolerance during training. Diego Silva, who smiled like he was going to a party instead of potential death. 9 others, each selected because they possessed something the Badger protocol required: the ability to keep going when everything said to stop. The opening ceremonies were held in a massive amphitheater carved from dark stone. Species arranged themselves by size and strength, with the most powerful predators occupying the central positions. Humans were directed to the outer ring, the position reserved for prey species and those considered least threatening. Sarath, the Rapthar champion, stood at the arena center. His scales had been polished until they shone like bronze armor. His claws were each as long as a human finger and sharp enough to cut through bone. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the amphitheater without technological assistance. "Welcome to the Arena Games," he announced. "Here, species prove their worth through combat. The strong earn respect. The weak learn their place." His yellow eyes swept across the assembled warriors and stopped on the humans. "And some learn that they should have stayed home." Laughter rolled through the crowd. Alex kept his expression neutral, but he could feel his team tensing beside him. They had trained for this, the psychological warfare that came before physical combat. Words were just another weapon. Gren, the Fenrock pack leader, approached the human contingent. His pack members flanked him, 6 massive wolf-like beings whose muscles rippled under their fur. Gren stopped just outside arm's reach and looked down at Alex with what might have been genuine concern. "Human commander," Gren said, "I offer you one final chance to withdraw. Join Fenrock as a client species. You will have protection, trade benefits, and you will not have to watch your warriors die in the arena. This is mercy." Alex met Gren's gaze without flinching. "We didn't come here for mercy. Then you came here for death." Gren's voice hardened. "Look around you, human. See the Kron, beings of living stone who can crush steel with their bare hands. See the Quillrack, whose poison can kill in seconds. See my pack, bred for thousands of generations to hunt and kill. And then look at yourself. Soft skin, weak jaws, no natural weapons at all. What do you have that could possibly threaten us? I guess you'll find out," Alex said quietly. The Fenrock warriors growled in unison, a sound that vibrated through the floor. Gren stared at Alex for a long moment, then turned away. "So be it. I will try to make your deaths quick." After the ceremonies, the teams were given quarters to prepare for the first round of combat. The human section was small and sparse, clearly not designed with the expectation that they would need it for long. Alex gathered his team in the common area. "Listen up," he said. "Everything out there is designed to make us doubt ourselves. The mockery, the intimidation, the physical disparity. They want us to be afraid before we even start fighting. Are we supposed to not be afraid?" asked Private Kelly Ward. She was young, barely 22, but she had placed in the top percentile for psychological resilience. "No," Alex said. "Fear is natural. Fear keeps you alert. But fear doesn't control us. We control it." He gestured to the patches on their shoulders. "You know what a honey badger doesn't do? It doesn't spend time worrying about what might happen. It sees a threat and it acts. It gets hurt and it keeps going. It faces something bigger and stronger and it fights anyway, because that's what it does." "The Rapthar expect us to fold," Ruth added. She was checking medical supplies, her movements calm and methodical. "Every species they've faced has either surrendered early or been destroyed quickly. They don't have a protocol for opponents who refuse to quit." "Exactly." Alex pulled up a holographic display showing the arena layout. "First round is tomorrow. We're facing the Quillrack in a jungle environment. They have poisonous spines, superior senses, and home terrain advantage. On paper, we should lose. But we won't," Diego said, still smiling. "Because they're going to fight like we're prey. And when prey fights back, really fights back, predators don't know what to do." That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He walked through the quiet corridors of the station. passing viewing windows that showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was Earth, depending on them to succeed. He thought about the training, the months of pushing human limits. They had studied footage of every arena match for the past decade. They had learned to recognize patterns, weaknesses, the moments when even the strongest predators made mistakes. A sound made him turn. Sareth stood in the corridor alone. The Rapthar champion approached with the easy confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "You cannot win," Sareth said without preamble. "I have studied your species. You are clever, yes, tool users, problem solvers, but in the arena tools are limited. It comes down to flesh against flesh, will against will, and your flesh is weak." "Maybe," Alex agreed, "but you're making an assumption." "What assumption?" "That flesh is what matters most." Alex met the champion's gaze. "You've fought prey species before. You've fought other predators, but I don't think you've ever fought something that combines both. Something smart enough to use tools and desperate enough to never stop." Sareth's head tilted slightly. A gesture Alex had learned indicated confusion. "You speak in riddles, human." "You'll understand tomorrow," Alex said. "When the fights begin, when you see what happens when prey stops running and starts hunting." He walked away, leaving the Rapthar champion standing in the corridor. Behind him he heard Sareth's low rumble of laughter, but there was something different in it now. Not mockery, uncertainty. Back in the human quarters, Alex found his team preparing in silence. They checked equipment, reviewed tactics, and mentally prepared for what was coming. No one spoke about the odds or the danger. They had moved past that during training. Now there was only the mission. Alex looked at each of them and felt a surge of pride. They were about to step into an arena designed to prove human weakness. Instead, they would prove something else entirely. They would show the galaxy what happened when you pushed humans to the edge and expected them to break. Honey badgers didn't break, and neither would they. The jungle environment was perfect for the Quillrack. Thick vegetation, high humidity, and countless places to hide their insectoid bodies while they waited to strike. The viewing platforms above the arena were packed with spectators who had come to watch the humans fail their first test. Alex moved through the undergrowth with his team spread out in tactical formation. The Badger protocol didn't rely on brute force. It relied on endurance, adaptability, and the refusal to acknowledge defeat. Right now, that meant using every advantage they could create. "Contact left," Ruth whispered through the comm. To Quillrack in the canopy, Alex didn't look up. Looking was what prey did. Instead, he signaled the team to continue forward as if they hadn't noticed. The Quillrack would expect fear, hesitation, defensive positioning. They would get none of those things. The attack came 30 seconds later. A Quillrack warrior dropped from the trees, spines extended, aiming for Li Chen. The insectoid was fast, faster than any human. But Li had spent 3 months training to recognize attack patterns. He rolled left instead of right, the direction most humans naturally dodged. And the Quillrack's strike hit empty ground. Diego was already moving, firing a burst from his weapon that caught the Quillrack in its less armored underbelly. The creature shrieked and retreated into the foliage. "First blood to humanity," came the announcement in multiple languages. The crowd's reaction was surprised murmurs rather than cheers. Humans weren't supposed to draw first blood. The Quillrack changed tactics. If ambush wouldn't work, they would use their superior numbers and knowledge of terrain. Warriors appeared from multiple directions, forcing the humans into a defensive circle. Alex counted 8 opponents, their spines dripping with venom that could paralyze in seconds. "They want to pin us down," Alex said calmly. "Don't give them what they want." Formation Delta. The team shifted, creating moving pairs instead of a static defense. The Quillrack had likely never seen this tactic. Most species either held ground or retreated. Humans did neither. They advanced while defending, pressing forward into the enemy position. A Quillrack warrior lunged at Kelly Ward. She sidestepped, but not quite fast enough. A spine caught her across the ribs, tearing through the combat suit and drawing blood. The toxin entered her system immediately. Alex saw her stumble. "Ward, report," he called out. "I'm good," Kelly said through gritted teeth. She pulled an injector from her belt and slammed it into her thigh. The countertoxin was one of humanity's advantages. They couldn't prevent injury, but they could treat it fast and keep fighting. Still in this, the Quillrack who had struck Kelly moved in for a finishing blow. It was a mistake. Kelly wasn't prey freezing in fear. She was a soldier trained to fight through pain. Her combat knife flashed out, catching the Quillrack across its visual sensors. The creature reeled back and Diego finished it with a precise shot. 2 down, Ruth reported. But we have multiple wounded. Lee took a spine to the shoulder. Private Harris has toxin exposure. Can they continue? Alex asked, already knowing the answer. They say yes, Ruth confirmed. That was the moment everything changed. The Quillrack warriors paused, their instincts confused. Injured prey was supposed to weaken, to slow down, to become easier targets. These humans were still fighting with the same intensity despite their wounds. Li Chen proved the point. The spine was still embedded in his shoulder, leaking venom into his system. A normal response would be to fall back and seek medical attention. Li's response was to grab the spine with his free hand and break it off, leaving the tip in his flesh to be dealt with later. Then he pulled a plasma torch from his belt, heated the blade of his knife until it glowed, and cauterized the wound while maintaining his position in the formation. The crowd above fell silent. Even the commentators seemed at a loss for words. On every viewing screen across the galaxy, beings watched a human soldier perform battlefield medicine on himself without even stopping to take cover. They don't feel pain like normal creatures, one Quillrack warrior chittered to another, loud enough for the translation systems to pick up. Alex heard it through his earpiece and smiled grimly. That was the misconception they wanted. The truth was worse for their opponents. Humans felt pain just fine. They just didn't let it stop them. The battle became a grinding attrition. The Quillrack were faster and better suited to the environment, but every exchange cost them more than they expected. Humans who should have been incapacitated by venom kept fighting. Warriors who took what should have been crippling injuries adapted and continued. The jungle that was supposed to be the Quillrack advantage became a maze where human tactics and stubborn endurance neutralized natural superiority. Private Harris went down hard, 3 spines in his chest. Ruth reached him, assessed the damage, and injected him with everything in her medical kit. He needs evacuation, she said. Harris, can you walk? Alex asked, can I shoot? Harris replied, his voice strained but determined. Good enough. Fall back to secondary position and provide cover fire. The Quillrack expected the wounded to be liabilities. Instead, Harris became a fixed gun position, forcing the insectoid warriors to adjust their approach. Every adaptation the Quillrack made, the humans countered. Every advantage they tried to press, the humans absorbed and redistributed. The decisive moment came when the Quillrack leader, a massive warrior with iridescent green carapace, charged directly at Alex. It was a dominance display, an attempt to break human morale by killing their commander. The creature was twice Alex's size, armored by nature, and armed with spines that could kill with a single strike. Alex stood his ground. The Quillrack leader expected hesitation, fear, or at least a defensive posture. Instead, Alex waited until the last possible second, then dropped and rolled directly toward the attacker. It was a move that went against every survival instinct, charging into danger instead of away from it. The Quillrack's attack passed over Alex's head, and he came up inside the creature's reach where its spines couldn't angle to strike. His knife found the joint between carapace plates. It was a small wound, barely significant given the Quillrack's size, but that wasn't the point. The point was that prey wasn't supposed to wound predators. Prey was supposed to die. The Quillrack leader thrashed, trying to dislodge Alex. He held on, taking crushing blows from the creature's limbs but refusing to let go. Around them, the rest of his team pressed the attack, using the distraction to eliminate the remaining Quillrack warriors. Finally, the Quillrack leader made a sound that the translators rendered as enough. It was the surrender signal. Alex released his grip and stepped back. Blood ran from a dozen cuts and his ribs felt cracked from the blows he had taken, but he was standing. His team was standing. 3 of them were wounded badly enough that they should have been out of the fight, but they were all standing. Victory to humanity. The announcement echoed through the arena. The silence from the crowd was absolute. Then slowly a sound began. Not cheering, not celebration. Something else. The clicking of mandibles, the rumbling of stone beings, the howls of pack hunters. It was acknowledgement, recognition. The sound of predators realizing that prey had teeth. In the medical bay afterward, Ruth worked on the wounded with practiced efficiency. Lee still had the spine tip in his shoulder. Harris needed treatment for massive toxin exposure. Kelly's ribs showed purple bruising from where the Quillrack spine had struck. We won, Diego said, and he was still smiling despite the burns on his arms. We survived, Alex corrected. The Quillrack were testing us. The real fights haven't started yet. Through the medbay window he could see Sareth watching from across the viewing area. The Rapthar champion's expression was unreadable, but he was watching. They all were now. The humans weren't a joke anymore. They were a question that needed answering, and the answer, Alex knew, was going to surprise them all. The arena for the second round was carved into a mountain range, all vertical cliffs and narrow ledges. Perfect terrain for the Fenrock pack, who had evolved as pursuit hunters in alpine regions. Gren stood at the starting position with his 5 pack members, their muscles coiled and ready for the hunt. Across from them, the human team looked smaller than ever. Alex could see the doubt in some of the spectators' eyes. The Quillrack had been a fluke, they thought. Luck and surprise. Against the Fenrock, who had dominated the arena for 3 seasons before the Rapthar took the championship, humans would show their true weakness. Gren approached before the match began. His expression was different from their first meeting. Not contemptuous, but predatory in a more calculated way. He had studied the Quillrack fight. He wouldn't make the same mistakes. You fought well against insects, Gren said. But the Fenrock are pack hunters. We have evolved to work together for thousands of generations. We know how to isolate prey, how to exhaust it, how to kill efficiently. Your endurance will not save you. Alex looked up at the Fenrock leader. You're wrong about something. What is that? You keep calling us prey. Alex's voice was calm, almost conversational. That's your first mistake. You're hunting creatures that hunt back. Gren's lips pulled back in a snarl that might have been a laugh. Humans are not hunters. You are tool users, scavengers. You lack the instincts of true predators. Maybe, Alex agreed. But we have something you don't. We have the Badger Doctrine. And what is that? Alex smiled. You'll see. The match began with the Fenrock doing exactly what Alex expected. They split into pairs using their superior speed and climbing ability to establish high ground positions. Classic pack hunting tactics. Isolate, surround, strike from multiple angles. Against most opponents, it was devastatingly effective. The humans didn't try to match the Fenrock's speed. They couldn't. Instead, they did something that confused the pack hunters. They split into 3 groups of 4 and immediately went on the offensive, pushing toward different Fenrock positions simultaneously. They're dividing their force, one of the Fenrock warriors said, confused. They're making themselves weaker. It's a trap, Gren warned. Stay coordinated. But coordination required communication, and communication took time. The humans were moving fast, not trying to win individual engagements but forcing the Fenrock to constantly react. It was exhausting mentally and physically to fight an opponent who didn't behave like prey. Li Chen's group encountered 2 Fenrock warriors on a narrow ledge. The aliens had every advantage. Better position, natural weapons, superior strength. They attacked, expecting a quick victory. Li took the first strike across his forearm, the Fenrock's claws tearing through armor and flesh. He didn't flinch, didn't fall back. Instead, he grabbed the Fenrock's arm and pulled, using the alien's own momentum to drag them both over the edge. They fell 3 meters onto a lower ledge. The impact should have stunned Li, probably broken bones. He rolled with the fall, came up bleeding, and kept fighting. The Fenrock warrior hesitated just for a second, shocked that prey would sacrifice position and safety for an attack. That second was enough. Diego's group was already there, having predicted the fall, and they eliminated the confused Fenrock warrior. This is insane, one of the Fenrock pack transmitted. They're taking damage that should stop them. Why aren't they stopping? Because we don't care, Ruth transmitted back, hacking into their communication frequency. That's what you don't understand. We don't care that it hurts. We don't care that you're stronger. We don't care about the odds. We're going to keep coming until either you quit or we physically cannot move. And humans can take a lot more damage than you think before we can't move. The psychological impact was immediate. The Fenrock were pack hunters, yes, but pack hunting relied on prey following predictable patterns. Run when chased, defend when cornered, submit when injured. Humans did none of these things. They chased when they should run. They attacked when cornered. They fought harder when injured. Gren recognized the danger. Fall back to defensive positions. We wait for them to exhaust themselves. But that was the second mistake. Humans were persistence hunters. Exhaustion was their weapon, not their weakness. The Badger Brigade had trained for months doing nothing but pushing past the point where their bodies said to stop. They had run until they collapsed, then gotten up and run more. They had fought through simulated injuries until pain became just another piece of data to acknowledge and ignore. The battle turned into exactly what the Fenrock didn't want: a long, grinding attrition match. Every exchange lasted longer than it should. Every Fenrock attack that landed was met with immediate counterattack instead of retreat. The humans bled and kept fighting. They took blows that cracked ribs and kept pressing forward. They accumulated damage that should have ended the match and treated it as acceptable cost. Private Kelly Ward epitomized the doctrine. A Fenrock warrior caught her in a grapple, claws digging into her shoulders. She should have struggled to escape. Instead, she pulled herself closer, eliminating the distance the Fenrock needed to use its natural weapons effectively. Her combat knife flashed out, finding the soft tissue under the Fenrock's jaw. The alien released her in shock and pain, retreating from an opponent who was willing to take damage to deliver it. They're not fighting to win, Gren realized, watching his pack struggle against opponents who should have been easy prey. They're fighting to make us quit. Alex heard the transmission and responded directly. Now you understand. This isn't about who's stronger or faster. It's about who's willing to pay the price. And humans learned a long time ago how to pay any price necessary. Dr. Amara Okonkwo watched from the viewing platform, surrounded by alien scientists and military analysts. Next to her, a Rapthar observer named Tarek was studying the human tactics with intense focus. "Explain this," Tarek demanded. "How are they continuing with those injuries? Our medical scans show broken bones, massive bruising, toxin damage from the previous fight that hasn't fully healed. They should be incapacitated." Amara pulled up a data display. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We couldn't outrun prey in a sprint, so we followed it for hours or days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We developed the ability to ignore pain signals, to keep moving when our bodies said to stop. It's not that we don't feel pain. We just don't let it control our decisions. That's not natural," Tarek protested. "Predators stop when the cost of hunting exceeds the benefit. It's basic survival logic." "For predators, yes," Amara agreed. "But humans aren't pure predators. We're omnivores who learned to hunt things bigger and stronger than ourselves. We couldn't afford to quit when things got hard. So we evolved to be the species that doesn't quit. Ever." On the arena floor, the Fenrock pack was facing a truth they had never encountered. They were losing to an inferior species, not because they were weaker than they thought, but because strength wasn't enough. The humans had turned the fight into a test of will, and will was the one area where they had an advantage. Gren made his decision. He could win, probably, if he was willing to pay the price in wounded pack members, in time, in the exhausting effort of fighting opponents who refused to acknowledge they were beaten. But the cost would leave his pack weakened for later rounds. He raised his hand in the surrender gesture. The arena fell silent. A Fenrock pack, dominant hunters and previous champions surrendering to humans. It should have been impossible. "Match to humanity," the announcement came. Alex stood among his bleeding, battered team and felt pride surge through him. They had done it. Not by being stronger, but by being exactly what the Badger Doctrine promised, the opponent who never stopped. In the aftermath, as medics attended to both sides, Gren approached Alex. The Fenrock leader's expression was complicated, mixing respect and frustration. "You are not warriors," Gren said quietly. "Warriors know when to yield." "You're right," Alex agreed. "We're not warriors. We're survivors, and survivors don't yield. We adapt, we endure, we outlast. That's what makes us dangerous." Gren studied the human commander for a long moment. Then he did something unprecedented. He bowed his head slightly, a Fenrock gesture of respect for a worthy opponent. "The galaxy will learn to fear that," Gren said, "as I have learned today." He walked away, leaving Alex alone with his team and the growing realization that they had just changed how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. They weren't prey. They weren't even predators in the traditional sense. They were something new. Something that combined intelligence with stubbornness, tactics with toughness, and wrapped it all in the simple, terrifying refusal to ever give up. They were badgers, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The championship arena was different from the earlier venues. It was a simple circular platform 50 meters across, surrounded by energy barriers. No terrain advantages, no environmental complications, just two opponents and the question of who would still be standing when it ended. Alex stood at one edge of the circle, feeling every injury from the previous rounds. His ribs were taped where the Quillrack leader had struck him. His left arm had reduced mobility from the grapple with the Fenrock warrior. Medical scans showed he was operating at perhaps 70% of normal human capacity. Across from him, Sareth waited. The Raptor champion was unmarked, untouched. He had destroyed every opponent in previous rounds without taking a single significant hit. His bronze scales gleamed under the arena lights. His claws flexed with casual confidence. The viewing platforms were packed beyond capacity. Every major species had representatives present. This match had become more than just a championship fight. It was humanity's final test. Could they compete at the highest level, or had their victories been flukes against weaker opponents? Final round of the arena games, the announcer's voice echoed. Champion Sareth of the Rapthar versus Commander Alex Santos of Earth. This is a battle for galactic supremacy and the right to claim full council status, Dr. Amara. Okonkwo stood in the human viewing section. Her hands clenched despite her calm expression. She had designed the Badger protocol, but she had never intended for it to pit a human directly against the galaxy's apex warrior. Alex was down there because the rules required team leaders to fight the championship round personally. He can't win this, Ambassador David Reed said quietly beside her. Sareth is too fast, too strong. Even with the Badger doctrine, there are physical limits. Maybe, Amara replied. But winning isn't always about being the strongest. Sometimes it's about being the last one standing. The match began without ceremony. Sareth moved first, closing the distance with speed that human eyes could barely track. His claw strike came from the left, aimed to incapacitate rather than kill. Champions didn't need to kill to win. Alex rolled right, but not fast enough. The claws caught his shoulder, tearing through armor and flesh. Pain exploded through his nervous system. A normal response would be shock, retreat, defensive positioning. Alex's response was to pivot into the strike, inside Sareth's reach, and drive his elbow into the Rapthar's midsection. It was like hitting stone. Sareth barely moved, but there was something in his eyes now. Surprise. Prey didn't counterattack while wounded. They separated. Blood ran down Alex's arm, but he kept it moving, refusing to favor the injury. Sareth circled, reassessing. This wasn't going to be as simple as he had thought. The Rapthar attacked again, this time with a combination of strikes designed to overwhelm human defenses. Alex took 2 hits, blocked one, and managed to land a strike of his own with his combat knife. It barely scratched Sareth's scales, but that wasn't the point. The point was showing that every attack came with a cost. You're quite durable for a human, Sareth said. But durability means nothing if you cannot win. You cannot harm me significantly. I will wear you down until you collapse. Maybe, Alex said, breathing hard. But how long will that take? How much energy will you spend? How many hits will you take that you didn't expect to take at all? Sareth's eyes narrowed. Then he laughed, a sound like grinding stone. I see it now. The Badger doctrine. You're not trying to beat me. You're trying to make victory too costly to pursue. Not exactly. Alex adjusted his stance, ready for the next exchange. I'm trying to show you what happens when you fight something that doesn't know how to quit. The battle became a brutal demonstration of the clash between 2 philosophies. Sareth fought with the precision and power of a being who had evolved as an apex predator. Every strike was calculated for maximum efficiency. Every movement conserved energy while delivering devastating force. Alex fought like a honey badger in human form. He took hits that should have ended the match and converted them into opportunities. He absorbed damage as acceptable cost. He turned every exchange into a war of attrition, making Sareth pay for every advantage with time and effort. Minutes passed. Then more. The crowd grew quieter as they watched something unprecedented. Champions didn't have long fights. Champions dominated quickly, but Sareth couldn't dominate an opponent who wouldn't acknowledge domination. Alex's left arm hung useless now, the shoulder injury too severe to ignore. He had taken hits to his ribs, his legs, his head. Blood matted his hair and stained his uniform. Medical monitors showed vitals that should have triggered automatic match stoppage. But he was still standing, still moving, still attacking whenever Sareth gave him the slightest opening. Sareth, for the first time in his career, was breathing hard. Not injured, but expending energy at an unsustainable rate. Fighting this human was like fighting a swarm. Except the swarm was a single opponent who kept coming back. Why won't you fall? Sareth demanded, frustration creeping into his voice. I have struck you enough times to kill 3 warriors. Why won't you fall? Because falling is a choice, Alex said through bloody lips. And I choose to keep standing. He launched another attack, slower now, visibly weakening. Sareth caught him, claws closing around his throat. One squeeze would end it. The Rapthar champion held Alex suspended, watching the human struggle with single-minded determination to break free, despite the impossibility. In that moment, Sareth understood. This wasn't about winning or losing anymore. This was about what each species represented. Rapthar were efficient killers, evolved to dominate through superior physical capabilities. But humans were something else. They were the species that survived ice ages and predators and natural disasters not because they were strong, but because they refused to accept extinction. Around them, Alex's team watched from the human section. Ruth had tears in her eyes, but her jaw was set. Lee stood at attention despite his own injuries. Diego had stopped smiling, but his eyes held fierce pride. They knew what Alex was doing. He was buying humanity's future with his blood and his stubborn refusal to surrender. Sareth looked into Alex's eyes and saw no fear. Only determination. Only the absolute certainty that even if this body failed, even if death came, the human would spend his last breath still fighting. The Rapthar champion had won hundreds of matches. He had defeated stronger opponents, faster opponents, more skilled opponents, but he had never fought an opponent whose will was unbreakable. Slowly, Sareth lowered Alex to the ground and released his throat. The human swayed but remained standing, fists still raised despite having only one functional arm. I yield, Sareth said. The arena erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Officials scrambled to confirm what they had heard. The announcer's voice was shocked into silence. The Rapthar champion, undefeated in 5 consecutive tournaments, had surrendered. Not because he had lost, but because continuing would mean killing an opponent who would never yield. And there was no honor in that. No victory in defeating someone who had already proven their worth. Sareth raised his voice to be heard over the crowd. This human cannot defeat me in combat, but he has defeated me in spirit.
He has shown me that strength is not only measured in claws and scales.
It is measured in the refusal to accept defeat. He turned to face the council viewing platform. I declare humanity worthy of full council status. They do not fight like prey. They fight like something prey should fear. Alex collapsed then, his body finally acknowledging the damage it had sustained. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor. Ruth reached him first, her hands already working to stabilize him. Did we win? Alex mumbled through the haze of shock and pain. Yeah, Ruth said, her voice breaking. Yeah, we won. In the aftermath, the galaxy struggled to process what had happened. Analysts studied the match recordings, trying to understand how a physically inferior species had earned the surrender of the Rapthar champion. Military theorists began incorporating human tactics into their doctrines. Scientists requested permission to study human psychology and endurance. The Badger Brigade became legendary. Their patch, the small black and white creature with bared teeth, became a symbol recognized across the galaxy. Species that had mocked humanity now negotiated with respect. Trade agreements were finalized on equal terms. Territorial disputes were settled fairly. 6 months later, Alex stood in the same Galactic Council chambers where Ambassador Reed had first accepted the arena challenge. His shoulder had healed, though it would never be quite the same. His ribs still ached in cold weather. But he stood tall as the Council formally welcomed Earth as a full member species. Sareth approached him after the ceremony. The Rapthar champion inclined his head in respect. Your species has changed the galaxy, Sareth said. We thought we understood strength. You taught us we were wrong. We're not stronger than you, Alex replied. We just have a different kind of strength. Yes, the strength to continue when all logic says to stop. The strength to fight not because you can win, but because surrender is unacceptable. Sareth's expression was thoughtful. It is terrifying in its way. An opponent who cannot be discouraged, cannot be intimidated, cannot be broken. The galaxy will take time to adjust to this. We don't want to be feared, Alex said. We want to be respected. You have earned both, Sareth assured him. And perhaps taught us something important. That the most dangerous predator is not always the one with the sharpest claws. Sometimes it is the one who simply will not stop. Alex looked around the council chambers, at species from 1,000 worlds, all watching humanity with new eyes. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't offering protection or mercy. They were offering something else, equality. The honey badger had taken the field, and the galaxy would never be the same. Somewhere on Earth, in African wildlife reserves, actual honey badgers continued their existence, unaware that they had become the symbol of humanity's place among the stars. They fought cobras and faced down lions, driven by instincts they didn't question, and courage they didn't analyze. It was fitting, because that was what humanity had learned to do. Not overthink, not hesitate, just keep going no matter what stood in the way. The badger doctrine had proven itself, not because it made humans stronger, but because it reminded them what they had always been. The species that survived everything the universe threw at them through sheer, stubborn refusal to quit. And that, more than any weapon or armor, made them truly dangerous.